Hello and welcome to IAMC Radio and Podcast.
Great to be here.
Let's explore the top news headlines for today, May 9th. We've got quite a range of stories today.
Definitely. A lot happening globally. Where should we start?
How about West Africa? There's something happening on the Benin and Nigeria border.
Yes, that's right. It seems the Benin Republic has closed its border with some communities in Nigeria's Kwara state.
Oh, which part specifically?
This affects the Tabaru route in Nigeria and Tanu in Benin. It went into effect Tuesday, May 7th.
And why the closure? What's the reason given?
Well, the official reasons are quite serious. There are allegations of arms smuggling from Benin into Nigeria.
Arms smuggling.
And also the emergence of what they're calling a new terror group, Mamuda.
A new terror group. Wow. And I heard something about a video.
Yeah, there's a viral video circulating too. It supposedly shows illegal arms being imported via helicopters.
Helicopters?
From where? From Parakou in Benin, apparently flying into Nigeria. But, the final destination isn't clear.
So local sources are confirming the closure.
They are. They say the route between Tabaru and Tanu was blocked. No entry, no exit.
And has Nigeria's government, specifically customs, responded?
The Nigerian Customs Service PRO said they're aware, and they will investigate. So we'll have to see what comes of that.
Definitely something to watch. Okay, let's move over to Europe. Ukraine.
Yes, a significant call from French President Macron. He's asking for an immediate, unconditional 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine.
Unconditional, that's a strong word there. Is this call backed by others?
It seems so. It follows talks with U.S. President Trump, and he apparently has support from British and Nordic partners, too.
And Macron included a warning.
He did. He warned of a, quote, firm response from Europe and the U.S. if Russia refuses.
Haven't we heard about ceasefire proposals before?
We have. Ukraine reportedly agreed to a similar U.S. idea back in March, but that was conditional on Russia also committing.
And Russia didn't commit.
No, they expressed skepticism. They were concerned about, Ukraine potentially using the time to mobilize, and also a lack of monitoring mechanisms.
Right, and Russia had its own brief ceasefire recently.
Or for Victory Day, yes, a 72-hour one. But Ukraine reported over 700 violations during that short period.
Doesn't sound very effective.
Not really, and President Zelensky is stressing the need for any ceasefire to be genuinely unconditional. It's a tough situation.
Very much so. Okay, let's shift again. South Asia, Pakistan and India.
Yeah, really concerning escalation there. Pakistan launched what it calls multiple retaliatory attacks along its western border with India.
When did this happen?
Thursday night and into early Friday morning. They reportedly used drones and other munitions.
And this was retaliation for what exactly?
India had carried out strikes on Wednesday. They targeted alleged terrorist camps inside Pakistan.
Why did India strike?
It followed that deadly attack on Hindu tourists in Indian Kashmir last month. India blames groups in Pakistan. Pakistan denies any involvement.
And this back and forth, has it caused casualties?
Tragically, yes. Nearly 24 deaths reported across both sides, from the shelling, the drone incursions, everything.
24? That's a lot.
It is. Some are calling it the deadliest confrontation since the Kargil conflict back in 1999.
Wow. So what are the claims and counterclaims now?
Well, India accuses Pakistani troops of numerous ceasefire violations along the line of control in Kashmir. They also claim they effectively repulsed drone attacks.
And Pakistan's response?
Their information minister called India's claims baseless and misleading. They deny launching any offensive actions.
So conflicting narratives as usual. Any specific incidents?
India's border security force said they foiled a major infiltration bid in Kashmir's Samba region. And there's heavy artillery shelling reported in the Uri sector, causing damage and casualties.
It sounds incredibly tense. Are border areas affected?
Yes. Sirens apparently went off in Amritsar, the Indian border city. Residents were urged to stay inside, tourists were leaving.
Anywhere else?
Precautions are up in other border areas too, like Bhuj and Gujarat and Bikaner and Rajasthan. School closures, potential evacuations. It's serious.
Has the international community weighed in?
There are calls for restraint. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is among those urging calm.
Let's hope those calls are heard.
Yeah.
Okay, completely different topic now. The Vatican.
Yes, a major development. American Cardinal Robert Prevost has been elected the new pope.
An American pope, that's a first, isn't it?
It is indeed the first time in history. He's taken the name Pope Leo XIV.
Pope Leo XIV. When was he elected?
On Thursday, the second day of the conclave. He's 69 years old and succeeds Pope Francis.
Has he made a public appearance?
He has. appeared at the central window of St. Peter's Basilica, gave the traditional blessing.
What's his background? Is he seen as more conservative or reformist?
Generally considered a reformer, he has a background as a missionary in Peru, later became an archbishop there.
Been within the Vatican.
He also headed the dicastery for bishops, which is a pretty key department involved in selecting bishops globally.
So now he leads 1.4 billion Catholics worldwide. A huge responsibility.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see the direction he takes.
Okay, let's turn to some sad news now from Sri Lanka. A helicopter crash.
Yes, unfortunately. 6 Sri Lankan military personnel died. It happened during a training exercise for a passing out parade.
What kind of helicopter and what happened?
It was a Bell 212. It crashed into the Maduru Oya Reservoir in central Sri Lanka while doing a grappling drill.
A training exercise gone wrong. Were there survivors?
Initially, yes. All 12 people on board were rescued from the water. But sadly, 6 of them died later from their injuries.
That's terrible. Who are the personnel?
4 were Special Forces personnel, and 2 were Air Force gunmen.
Is there an investigation?
Yes, an investigation is underway to figure out the cause of the crash. Just a tragic incident during training.
Indeed. All right, back to the U.S. now. A significant military policy change.
Yes. Following a U.S. Supreme Court ruling, the military is set to begin removing transgender troops.
Immediately. How many people are affected?
The process starts immediately, yes. It affects approximately 1,000 service members.
And this follows the Supreme Court allowing President Trump's ban.
That's correct. The court allowed the ban on transgender military service to take effect.
How will the removal process work?
They're starting with service members who had already self-identified for voluntary separation before March 26th of this year.
And if they don't leave voluntarily?
Then they face involuntary separation by early June.
What was the reasoning in the president's order again?
The executive order stated that expressing a false gender identity divergent from an individual's sex cannot satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service. That was the official justification.
Okay. Staying domestic, but shifting topic. Child protection laws in Nigeria.
Yes, President Tinubu in Nigeria has made a strong call for better enforcement of the Child Rights Act and other related laws.
What prompted this?
He launched a national action plan on ending violence against children in Nigeria.
An action plan. Does it include specific measures?
It does. There are plans to set up a dedicated child protection and development agency.
That sounds significant. Anything else?
Yes, also launching a universal child grant, creating a national child protection database, and something called a child well-being index.
So it's a multi-pronged approach.
Exactly. He spoke at a regional meeting about this, emphasizing that it's not just about laws, but about, prevention, early intervention, strengthening families, supporting vulnerable households, a comprehensive strategy.
Good to see focus on that. Okay, now another story involving the U.S. and refugees, white South Africans.
That's right. Reports indicate the Trump administration is preparing to resettle a group of white South African refugees, Afrikaners, possibly as soon as next week.
This sounds controversial given the broader context of refugee policy.
It is controversial, yes. It seems to prioritize this specific white minority group, while there's generally a freeze on most refugee admissions.
What's the administration's justification?
They're claiming these individuals are victims of racial persecution in South Africa.
And the process has been fast.
Reportedly, yes. Processed within about 3 months, which is much faster than usual for refugees.
This follows earlier signals from the president.
It does. President Trump had previously mentioned a possible exception for Afrikaners, and the administration also cut U.S. financial aid to South Africa earlier.
So refugee agencies will handle resettlement.
Yes. They'll assist with housing, necessities, support, the usual process.
But critics are raising concerns.
Yes. The main criticism is about prioritizing this group over, thousands of other vulnerable refugees waiting worldwide. And the South African government isn't happy either.
What are they saying?
They've accused the Trump administration of spreading misinformation about the situation in South Africa.
Okay, another U.S. administration story, this time about the CDC.
Yes, a committee at the CDC, the Healthcare Infection Control Practices Advisory Committee, HICPAC, has been quietly shut down.
HICPAC, what did they do?
They were pretty important. They set the standards for infection control in U.S. hospitals, things like hand hygiene, masking guidelines, isolating patients.
And it was shut down. When?
Terminated back on March 31st, apparently. Members were informed sometime after that.
Why was it shut down?
It seems to align with President Trump's executive order to reduce the size of the federal workforce, cut down on committees.
What are the potential consequences of losing this committee?
Well, experts are concerned. They worry about losing essential tools to tackle new infectious threats, developing guidelines quickly, and also concerns about transparency, public access to how these guidelines are made in the future.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, let's talk trade. U.S.-China tariffs.
Yes, President Trump hinted at a possible reduction in tariffs on Chinese imports.
A reduction to what level?
He suggested maybe lowering them to 80%, which would be quite a drop from current levels, some of which are extremely high, up to 245% on certain goods.
Did he give any context? Any planned talks?
He mentioned that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will be conferring with China's Vice Premier He Lifeng to discuss trade.
And he had a message for China?
Yes, he also stated, quote, China should open up its market to USA.
Interesting timing, especially after the recent UK trade deal announcement.
Exactly. It could signal a potential shift, or at least a new phase in the U.S.-China trade relationship. We'll have to watch that space.
Definitely. And finally, let's go back to the Vatican for our last headline.
Right. The new Pope, Leo XIV. He's already held his inaugural Mass.
Where was that held?
In the Sistine Chapel, with the College of Cardinals who just elected him. This followed the conclusion of the two-day conclave.
So formal proceedings are underway.
Yes. He addressed the cardinals after the Mass, and he was expected to have a private lunch with them before they head back to their home countries.
And looking ahead, what's on his plate? What are the big challenges?
Well, it's a pretty complex agenda he inherits. There are ongoing financial challenges within the church, debates about LGBTQ inclusion, the status of divorced Catholics, questions about women's roles in leadership. Quite a lot.
So his early decisions will be watched very closely.
Extremely closely, yes, by Catholics and many others around the world.
All right, that covers the major headlines we were tracking for today.
A busy day on the global stage.
Indeed. Thank you for listening to today's top news headlines on IAMC Radio and podcast.